The screams behind the wall Mason was not looking for trouble. He had come to the alien city of Kyreth only to buy machine parts. The sky was orange, the air smelled like burning salt, and the market streets were busy with all kinds of alien creatures. They shouted, bargained, and laughed. Music played from glowing orbs floating in the air. But as Mason walked past a tall stone wall, he heard something strange. A sound. A soft, painful cry. He stopped. The sound was coming from behind the wall. It wasn't music or machines, it was someone crying. No, screaming. Very faint, like they had been screaming for hours or days. Mason looked around. No one seemed to notice, or maybe they were ignoring it. He turned to an old alien vendor sitting by the corner. "What's behind the wall?" Mason asked. The alien, a gray-skinned elder with wrinkled eyes, frowned and looked away. "Not your business, human. It is punishment. Leave it alone." "Punishment? She is cursed. Let her die." Mason's heart felt heavy. He walked on, but the sound followed him. The crying, the weak voice. He stopped again. His hands curled into fists. He wasn't a hero. He didn't like getting involved. But something in that scream. It reminded him of someone, his sister. She had died years ago, chained in a human prison. No one helped her. Mason turned around. He waited until the crowd grew thinner. Then he walked quietly to the back of the wall, where an old gate was locked with a rusty chain. There was a small hole near the ground. He knelt and looked through, and what he saw made his stomach turn. A woman, no, an alien woman, was chained to a tall pillar in the center of a stone yard. Her body was bruised. Stones were piled at her feet. Some had blood on them. Her skin, dark blue with glowing white lines, was torn and dry. Her lips were cracked, her eyes barely open. She was still alive. Mason's breath caught in his throat. He backed away. The image burned into his mind. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he returned. He brought a water flask and a soft bread roll in his bag. Again, he waited for the street to grow quiet. He climbed over a broken wall and entered the yard. The woman didn't move. She didn't even lift her head. But when he placed the water near her lips, she opened her eyes. Just a little. Her eyes were glowing white. They widened when she saw him, a human, kneeling in front of her. She coughed. Blood came out. Mason lifted the flask. Slowly she drank. Just a sip. Her hands were chained so tight they had turned dark. Mason touched one gently. She flinched. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't hurt you." She stared at him. Her lips moved. She said something, but he didn't understand her language. Mason pulled out his translator chip and held it near her mouth. "Why, help?" her weak voice said through the device. Mason didn't answer. He unwrapped the bread and broke off a piece. Gently, he fed it to her. She chewed slowly, like it was the first food she had tasted in days. "Who did this to you?" Mason asked. She looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. "Tribe, leader, punished, took, child." Her voice broke. She shook her head as if speaking hurt more than the chains. Mason felt a deep rage rise inside him. What kind of place was this? They left her here to die? They called it justice? He stood up and looked at the heavy lock. It was ancient, rusted. He could break it. Maybe not now, but if he brought tools. But what then? The whole city would turn on him. Helping a punished woman could get him arrested. Or worse. He looked down at her again. The woman was watching him with silent eyes. She didn't beg. She didn't cry out. She had already given up. That made it worse. Mason reached down and gently placed a blanket over her shaking body. "I'll be back," he said. "I promise." As he left the yard, he felt something strange inside his chest. He didn't know who she was. He didn't even know her name. But deep inside he had made a choice, and he would not walk away again. The chains of her crime Mason couldn't sleep that night. Even in his small rented room, far from the stone yard, he could still hear the woman's dry coughs. He could still see the broken look in her glowing eyes, and he couldn't stop thinking about her last words. Took child. The city of Kaireth was cruel. He had seen strange things before, aliens punished, sold, hurt. But this felt different. This was slow death, and worse, no one cared. At sunrise, Mason went to the market not for parts but for tools, a bolt cutter, a small torch, a translator earpiece, and something simple but important, clean clothes, something soft, something warm. He tucked everything in a worn-out bag, checked the alley, and slipped behind the wall. She was still there, still chained, still silent. But her eyes opened when she saw him. They followed his every move now. She didn't flinch like before. Maybe she started to believe he was real. Mason knelt beside her again. "I'm going to help you," he said softly. "I brought food, water, tools." He gave her a drink first, then a protein bar. She bit into it like a starving animal. Then Mason carefully lifted the translator to her lips. "Tell me your name," he said. She swallowed hard, then whispered, "Shalin." He repeated it. "Shalin." Her eyes blinked slowly, like hearing her name from someone else made her remember who she was. As he examined the chain, Shalin spoke again. Broken words, soft voice. "Leader. Say I curse tribe. Say I speak lies." Mason paused. "What lies?" She shook her head slowly. "I saw leader take my child. He said child must be his." Mason's hand tightened around the bolt cutter. He say, "I shame him. Say I fight. So he punish me. No trial. No choice." She closed her eyes. "They throw stones. Chain me. I wait for Sky to take me." Mason's chest burned. This wasn't just punishment. This was murder, covered by law and silence. He stood up and tested the chain. The lock was rusted but strong. He placed the bolt cutter around one link and tried to squeeze. Nothing. Too thick. "Okay," he muttered. "Torch then." He pulled out the small flame torch and aimed it at the lock. The metal hissed. Smoke rose. Shalin flinched but didn't scream. Her body was shaking now. From cold, from fear, from exhaustion. Mason took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You won't die here," he said. But before the torch could finish, a voice echoed behind them. "Stop!" Mason froze. Two alien guards stood in the broken wall's opening, their electric spears glowing. One of them pointed. "You, human! Step away from the cursed one!" "She's not cursed," Mason shouted. "She's just a mother. You break law. You touch the punished. This is not your world." Mason stood tall. "Then maybe your world is broken." The guards raised their weapons. Mason grabbed his bag and turned to Shalin. "Hold on," he whispered. He slung her thin body over his shoulder. She was so light it broke his heart, like bones in wind. He ran. They chased him through the alley, through narrow turns, through piles of crates and spilled fruit, through shocked gasps of onlookers. Mason dodged one spear, then another. A fireball cracked a wall near his head, but he didn't stop. He ran. When he finally reached his small workshop, he locked the door behind him and dropped to the floor, gasping. Shalin lay on a soft cot, breathing hard. He turned to her. "You're safe now." Her voice was weak but clear. "Why?" Mason looked into her eyes. "Because no one else did," he whispered. That night, he cleaned her wounds, gave her a real meal, put bandages on her wrists. She looked at him like she couldn't believe it was real. He handed her the soft clothes. "Wear these when you're ready." She touched the fabric like it was made of gold. And slowly, her eyes filled with tears. No one had touched her gently for so long. No one had treated her like a person. Until now. Outside, the city began to talk. A human broke tribal law. The cursed woman escaped. The guards failed, and someone wanted them both dead.
He carried her through. Fire Shalyn opened her eyes to a soft light. She was no longer cold stone and dust. No chains around her wrists. No wind full of sand cutting her skin. She was lying on a soft bed. The smell of clean cloth filled the air.
Her body still hurt, but it wasn't the same pain. Someone had wrapped her wounds. Someone had placed a blanket over her. And that someone was sitting nearby watching her quietly. The human. She didn't even know his real name. But his face was calm. His hands were rough but kind. He had risked his life. For her. "Where am I?" she whispered through the translator. "My workshop," Mason answered. "Hidden part of the city. They won't find us here, not yet." He gave her warm soup, a soft towel, a piece of fruit. She ate slowly, like she was afraid it was just a dream. But it wasn't. Mason checked her pulse, her bruises, her feet. She couldn't walk yet. Her ankles were swollen. Her ribs were cracked. And worse, she had a mark on her back. The cursed symbol burned into her skin. If anyone saw it, they would know. They would try to kill her again. For 2 nights, Mason hid her in silence. When guards passed by, he turned off the lights. When neighbors knocked, he lied. When the hunger patrol came searching, he sent them away with machine oil and broken parts. But on the 3rd night, someone set fire to the back alley. Flames rose like monsters. Smoke filled the air. Sparks jumped onto his roof. Someone had told. The guards. Someone had found them. Mason rushed to her side. "Can you stand?" he asked. She shook her head. "I'll carry you." He didn't wait. He wrapped her in a long cloak and lifted her into his arms. The heat burned his face. The smoke stung his eyes, but he didn't stop. He kicked open the back door and ran through the fire. Flames licked at his coat. Ash fell like black snow. Wood cracked, metal bent, glass shattered. The fire chased them like a beast with no face. Shalyn coughed. Her fingers clutched his shirt, but Mason's grip was steady. "I got you," he said again and again. He ran until he reached the sewer gate, a small tunnel beneath the city. The locals never used it. It was filthy, wet, rotten, but it led to the outer cliffs. Mason forced the gate open with his boot. Inside was darkness. "I'm sorry," he told her. "It's going to smell like death, but it's better than real death." She nodded weakly. "I trust you." Those 3 words pushed him forward. They moved through the tunnel slowly. Water dripped from the walls. Insects scattered as they passed. He carried her until his legs trembled. He almost slipped once, nearly falling into a dark pit. But he held her tighter and moved on. After what felt like hours, they came out into the night air. Stars above, cool wind on their faces. The burning city far behind them. Mason found an old shack on the edge of the cliffs. It was falling apart, but it would do. He placed her gently on a bed of furs. "You're safe," he whispered. But deep down, he knew. They were now outlaws. That night, Shalyn spoke again. She told him her full name. She told him about her child, a small boy with pale eyes and soft hands. His name was real. She told him how the tribal leader came to her home, said her child had special blood, and dragged him away. When she screamed and tried to fight, they called her cursed. They said she challenged the tribe's will, so they chained her, stoned her, left her to die. Mason listened in silence. His hands shook with anger, not just for her, but because this world allowed it. Because everyone around her stayed silent. But he wouldn't. Not anymore. As the wind howled outside, Mason placed a warm cover over her and said, "We'll find him. Your son." Shalyn's eyes widened. "You believe me?" "I do." "Why?" Mason looked at her for a long moment. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone, and no one should go through that alone." Outside the shack, something moved in the shadows. A drone, a signal, a pair of red alien eyes watching from the cliffs. They weren't safe. Not yet. But inside, for the first time in many nights, Shalin slept. Not as a prisoner, not as a cursed one, but as someone who mattered. She opens her eyes to a human world. Shalin had never seen the world this way before. She opened her eyes to the soft light of a rising sun, not the harsh darkness of chains and punishment. For a moment, she didn't move. She just listened. No screams, no footsteps, no voices calling her cursed, only wind, the chirping of strange birds, the slow crackle of firewood burning in a small stove. She turned her head. There, beside a rusty window, sat the human, Mason, slowly fixing a broken radio. His hands moved with care. His face looked tired, but peaceful. When he saw her awake, he smiled gently. "Morning." She stared at him. "We still alive?" Chuckled softly. "Barely." He brought her a bowl of warm porridge. She held it with shaking hands. It had been so long since anyone had served her food, since anyone looked her in the eye and waited, not to judge, but just to be kind. "Is this your home?" she asked. "No," Mason replied. "Just a hiding place. I used to use it when I traveled for trade. No one comes here." Shalin looked around. Everything was old, but clean. He had made the broken shack into a home just for her. Later that day, he helped her walk. Her legs were weak. Each step hurt, but he held her gently, one arm around her waist, steady and patient. "You can lean on me," he said. "I already do," she whispered. They walked outside. Shalin gasped. She had never seen this part of the land. The cliffs stretched far, with blue rivers cutting through valleys and giant trees glowing with tiny lights. The sky had no smoke, only soft clouds and distant stars. "It's beautiful," she said. "Yeah," Mason nodded. "No one bothers to look anymore." She sat on a large stone. The sun warmed her skin. Mason sat nearby, looking out at the horizon. She asked him, "Why did you come here? Why help me?" He took a long breath. "Years ago," he began, "my sister was taken to a labor camp. She was accused of stealing. She didn't, but no one listened. They locked her up, beat her, forgot her." He paused. "I tried to get her out, but I was too late." Shalin watched his eyes. She saw the pain there. "So, when I saw you, I thought, maybe this time I can make a difference." The wind picked up. She pulled his jacket tighter around her thin shoulders. Mason stood and quietly walked back into the shack. When he returned, he carried something in his hand. A silver necklace, simple but beautiful. "This belonged to my sister," he said, kneeling in front of her. "I think she'd want you to have it." Shalin's hands trembled as she touched the necklace. "Why would you give this to me?" "Because you're still fighting. And she would have done the same." Tears filled her eyes. She looked away, ashamed. "I am broken?" "No," Mason said firmly. "You're alive, and that means you're not done yet." That night they sat together by the fire. Shalin, slowly learning new words in English. Mason, slowly learning how to smile again. They laughed when she mispronounced simple things. She laughed harder when he failed to mimic her alien phrases. For a moment, they weren't a human and an alien. They were just two lost souls who found something they didn't know they needed. But peace never lasts forever. As the night grew deep, a sharp beep echoed from Mason's old radio. He rushed to it. Shalin watched as his face went pale. "What is it?" she asked. "They're looking for us," he whispered. "The tribal guards. They know we escaped through the sewers. They're checking old paths. They're getting closer." Her hands tightened around the blanket. "I don't want to be caught again." "You won't," he promised. "But they will not stop," she said. "They will find us, and then they will take my son forever." Mason looked her in the eyes. Then we find him first. Outside the shack, the wind carried a scent of danger. Inside, Mason began packing supplies. Shalyn, weak but determined, stood to help. No more hiding, no more running. Now, they were going to fight for something worth living for. The lost child's secret. The moonlight made Shalyn's skin glow silver. She stood at the edge of the cliff, wind pulling her hair, eyes closed, lips moving without sound. She wasn't praying. She was remembering. Her child. His little fingers, grabbing her hand, his soft voice calling her Mahra, his cries when they took him. Mason stood behind her, holding a small travel bag. He didn't speak. He waited until she opened her eyes again. "I remember where they took him," she said softly. "I was too weak before, but now, I see it clearly." "Tell me," Mason said. "Not far. A hidden village. In the forest, beyond the Black River, a place only the tribal warriors go." Mason's eyes narrowed. "What's there?" "A training ground. For future leaders. Boys they call chosen blood." Her voice cracked. "My son is one of them now." They traveled on foot. The road was rough, the cliffs sharp. But Mason helped her step by step. When she couldn't walk anymore, he carried her. Again. They crossed old bridges, quiet caves and strange glowing fields where plants whispered in the wind. On the third day, they found the village. It was hidden behind thick trees. Alien guards in armor stood at the gates. Large silver beasts, part machine, part animal, watched the edges. Children trained in lines, holding wooden spears. Mason and Shalyn hid behind rocks, watching. Then she gasped. There, a small boy, tall for his age, pale skin with blue eyes that glowed, walked among the others. "He's grown," she whispered. Mason stared. "He looks strong." "Yes, but he doesn't remember me." Her eyes filled with tears. At night, Mason sneaked into the outer grounds. He watched the children closer. The boy named Real was quiet. He followed orders. He trained harder than the others. But he never smiled. He never laughed. And each night he sat by himself under a tree, holding a small wooden figure. A broken toy. Shalyn had carved it once. From stone. She had given it to him when he turned 3. "He still has it," Mason whispered the next night. Shalyn's heart twisted. "Then a part of him and still remembers me." "But they're feeding him lies," Mason said. "I heard the trainer call him the future voice of the tribe, the leader's heir. They're shaping him." "Into what?" she asked. Mason didn't answer. The next night, Shalyn gave Mason something, a tiny necklace with a glowing stone. "This belonged to his father," she said. "If he sees it, he'll know it's from me." Mason nodded. "I'll give it to him." Mason waited until the guards fell asleep and the children returned to their sleeping pods. He slipped through the fence. He found Real under the same tree. The boy looked up as Mason approached. "Who are you?" Real asked in a quiet voice. Mason smiled. "A friend." "You don't look like a friend." Mason slowly sat beside him and held out the necklace. The boy stared at it. His hands shook. He touched the glowing stone. "I know this." "It's from your mother," Mason said. "My mother is dead. No, she's alive and she's waiting." The boy looked up, confused, scared. "She told me your name. She told me what they did. She never gave up on you." Suddenly, a loud alarm rang out. Red lights flashed in the distance. Mason turned. "Go back to your pod. Say nothing." Real hesitated. "Will I see her?" Mason nodded. "Soon. I promise." He ran through the trees, guards shouting behind him. Shalyn waited at the base of a hill, hiding behind a broken crawler. "You have it?" she asked. "He took the necklace," Mason said, out of breath. "And I told him. He knows now." She clutched her chest. "Thank you." But Mason's face was dark. "They're coming." They moved fast through the forest. But This time, they weren't just running for themselves, they were running for him. That night, under the stars, Shaolin looked at Mason. Why do you risk so much? He looked at her for a long time. Because every child deserves their mother, and every mother deserves a second chance. In the distance, Rill sat on his bed holding the necklace tight in his fist. A memory surfaced in his young mind. A soft song, a kind smile, a warm hand wiping away tears. He didn't know why, but he began to cry. And for the first time in years, he whispered, "Mahara." The fight for a mother's right rain poured from the sky like the heavens wept for justice. Shaolin stood at the edge of the forest, hidden under leaves, her cloak soaked. She stared through the trees toward the guarded village. Her heart beat faster with every flash of lightning. Her son was in there. And they would not give him back. Not without a fight. Mason checked his gear. Nothing fancy. Just smoke bombs, a flashlight, a small pulse cutter, and the map he had drawn from his nights of spying. "You still want to do this?" he asked. Shaolin didn't blink. "He's my child. That village is full of warriors. Then I will face them." Mason saw something in her eyes that no chain, no beating, no punishment had ever broken. The strength of a mother who refused to be forgotten. They waited until midnight. The village quieted. The guards stood bored in the rain. Most believed the human was long gone. No one expected him to return with the cursed woman herself. They slipped through the same weak fence Mason had found earlier. They moved like shadows. Shaolin led the way now, her feet silent on the wet grass. She knew how this land breathed. They reached the children's sleeping area. Shaolin stopped. There, under the same tree, sat her son, awake, clutching the necklace Mason had given him. She stepped forward, heart trembling. "Rill," she whispered. He turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, the world froze. "Mahara," he said softly like it was a forbidden word. "Yes, my child," she said, voice shaking. "It's me." He stood slowly, took a step, then another. She dropped to her knees and opened her arms. He ran to her, and everything she had suffered, every scar, every chain, every lonely night, melted in his small embrace. But the moment didn't last. Shouts exploded in the village. Someone had spotted them. Lights flashed. Guards shouted, sirens screamed. Mason pulled them both to cover. "Go! Run into the trees!" he yelled. Shaolin held her son's hand tight and followed Mason through the back gate. But this time, the guards were ready. A net trap snapped, upward catching Mason in midair. Shaolin screamed. "No!" He cut himself free with the pulse blade falling hard. Two guards rushed toward them, spears raised. Mason grabbed a smoke bomb, slammed it to the ground. Boom! Smoke covered the forest floor. He grabbed Rill with one arm and pulled Shaolin with the other. They ran through mud, through firelight, through shouting voices and slashing branches. A spear grazed Mason's leg. He stumbled, but kept going. Rill cried out, "Where are we going?" Shaolin answered without looking back. "Home. We're going home." Finally, they reached the crawler they had hidden days before in the cliffs. Mason threw open the hatch. "Inside!" They jumped in. Shaolin held her son tight as Mason started the old engine. The crawler roared to life. Guards appeared on the ridge. They threw electric chains, but missed. The crawler sped into the dark. Hours passed. The forest thinned. The rain stopped, and inside the small crawler, a mother held her son like he was the universe. Mason patched his bleeding leg. Rill watched him carefully. "Why did you come?" the boy asked. Mason smiled weakly. "Because your mother never stopped loving you. She was punished. They said she lied. They lied. She protected you." Rill looked at his mother. "Is it true?" Shaolin held his face gently. "I was afraid, but I never gave up. You are my heart." That night, as the stars broke through the clouds, Rill fell asleep in his mother's arms. Mason stayed awake, sitting by the crawler's door, watching the road behind them. They had escaped. Now, but the tribe would not forget, and soon, a new choice would have to be made. Shalyn joined him in silence. "He remembers me," she whispered. Mason nodded. "He loves you, even if they tried to take that away." She looked at Mason for a long time. "I owe you everything." He smiled. "Then let's keep him safe. Together." And in that quiet night, under strange stars, 2 broken souls and a rescued child became more than just survivors. They became a family. The one who stood against all. The sun rose over the hills like a silent witness. Mason stood outside the crawler, boots on cracked earth, eyes scanning the horizon. His body ached, his leg was still bleeding, but he didn't care. They were almost at the old refuge town, a hidden human base forgotten by most maps. If they reached it, Shalyn and her son would be safe. For good. Inside the crawler, Shalyn braided her son's hair with trembling fingers. Rill sat quietly, still holding the stone necklace. He hadn't let it go since she came back into his life. "Do you hate me?" she whispered. The boy shook his head. "No. I'm trying to remember. Your face feels warm." She smiled with wet eyes. "That's all I want." Suddenly, a high-pitched sound cracked the air. Drones, dozens of them. Flying fast, marked with the tribal crest, they circled the crawler like angry birds. Mason shouted, "They found us!" The sky flashed red. A voice echoed through speakers. "Surrender the cursed one and the stolen child. The human will not be harmed." Mason looked at Shalyn. "You know that's a lie." She grabbed Ryl's hand and nodded. No more running. They stepped out together. The ground rumbled as tribal warriors landed from the sky, armor shining. Blasters ready. The tribal leader stepped forward, a tall, cruel-faced alien with a golden chest plate. "Give me the boy," he said, "and you may leave with your life, human." Mason stepped in front of Shalyn and Rill. "Over my dead body," the leader sneered. "You defend a marked traitor. I defend a mother. You insult our law. Your law is broken." The leader raised his hand. "Take them." The soldiers moved forward. But then, a new sound came. Engines, from the west. A row of old armored vehicles appeared on the ridge. Human machines. The refugee outpost had heard the signal. Mason sent 2 nights ago. Help had come. The tribal soldiers hesitated. From the trucks, humans stepped out. Miners, traders, farmers. Not fighters. But they stood strong. One woman held a blaster in one hand and a medical kit in the other. She shouted, "That woman is under our protection." The tribal leader growled, "This is not your war." Mason stepped forward. "Then I make it mine." Shalyn raised her head. Her chains were gone, but her voice had never been louder. "You took my child. You buried me in stone. And still I live." The tribal warriors stared. Some looked unsure. "Your strength is built on silence," she shouted. "But I am not silent anymore." A long pause. Then, one of the younger soldiers stepped back. Then another. Then 3 more lowered their weapons, even in the tribe. Some had begun to see the truth. The leader, shaking with rage, pointed his blaster at Shalyn. "I should have ended you when I had the chance." He fired, but Mason moved faster. He stepped in front of her and took the shot in the shoulder. Rill screamed. "No!" Shalyn dropped to her knees beside Mason. He gritted his teeth. "Still, not done yet." The human refugees raised their weapons. The tribal warriors backed away. The leader saw his power was gone. He turned to run, but Shalyn stood and aimed Mason's blaster. "No more chains," she said. 1 shot. He fell. Silence. Then, cheers from the humans, and even some from the tribal soldiers who threw down their weapons. Later at the refugee camp, Mason's wound was bandaged. Shalyn and Rill stayed beside him the entire time. You saved me again, she whispered. He smiled weakly. You saved yourself? That night the camp was quiet. Children played. Fires glowed. Peace finally settled in. Rill slept beside his mother. Shalyn sat beside Mason, watching the stars. I have no tribe now, she said softly. Mason looked at her. Yes, you do. She turned to him. You? He nodded. Me. Him. And anyone who chooses love over fear. Shalyn took his hand, and for the first time in her life she didn't feel cursed. She felt chosen.